Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Virtual Classroom Show. My name is Rusty May, and I am, I'm a school counselor by trade. We decided to, been doing these shows for the last couple of weeks and wanted to look into checking in with educators out there to see if they had stuff to say. We called this show Educators Unmuted, as a way of trying to give some educators an opportunity to share their stories as well. I know a lot of experts have been sharing their information and their feedback about what's been going on, and I wanted to give educators like yourselves an opportunity to talk a little bit about your experience and what's going on with you if you choose to share, and to give some information as well about what to expect going forward as we continue to work our way through this process and look at next year. As I said before, I'm a school counselor by trade, have been an online educator for 17 years. And when this all happened, I became very interested in trying to help educators in the K-16 environment deal with the connectivity part and connecting with students and so forth. And the show over the last 2 months has really focused on that part of it. And so I appreciate you being here today. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone. If you want to share and tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're here today. Adriana? I can get her unmuted. How about Teddy G? Hey, Teddy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well.
You've been with us on several different shows.
Yes, I've enjoyed all your shows and it's definitely helped me in terms of connecting and communicating with my students during these tough times. I'm not a teacher by trade. I'm actually a manager at an academia library, but I do work with student employees. And after the pandemic started, I basically reached out to them, checked on their well-being, their mental health, and I've been doing that ever since and even after the semester concluded. But I did get a lot of helpful information in terms of how to deal with their personal issues, but as well as both their academic and their professional, making sure that everything are aligned and post pandemic, what do we do moving forward and helping them.
So what was your experience so far? I mean, what kind of give me a little bit of a rundown on what you were experiencing talking to your students and so forth, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So most of the experience just pretty much comes from the academic standpoint. So prior to the semester concluded on May 15th, I pretty much just wanted to make sure everybody was okay. A lot of folks aren't familiar with online classes, and thankfully, I did my master's online. So having that experience, I was able to share with my students. Make sure you're on top of discussion boards. You submit your papers on time. You email your professors. You meet with them. Utilize the online resources, Zoom, Skype, however your professor, your instructor wants to communicate with you. Find those means of getting your questions answered, getting your problems addressed. But after the semester ended, we now have this, protesting, and a lot of the students who I work with live in New York City, live in metropolitan areas. So having to address that issue as well, be careful when you're going outside, do not be one of those protesters who are looting, make sure that if you're going to protest, do it civilly. So now having to address that issue as well and tackle that, it's been an adjustment from the academia standpoint to now the civil unjust and just making sure that they understand that this is happening because of what's happening. That's not under your jurisdiction per se, but it's something that you can look at and say, okay, if this is happening, how can I incorporate that and make my life better?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see how these two things have dovetailed, and obviously with the effects of the coronavirus being so much more substantial everywhere, but especially in the United States to minority communities. It almost seems like a double-edged sword now, and you've got kids who are just absolutely frustrated with the whole process, and you're seeing that pouring out into the streets in the United States, and pretty much unprecedented since the 60s. So it's interesting to see that you're still involved in this during this period of time. Are you planning on staying in contact with your students all summer long?
Yeah, even those who graduated this semester, I'm actually trying to help them find jobs. So just, if I hear of a job posting of a website, anything that can help them for the time being, I want to share that information with them. But even with the students who may not be taking summer classes, may not have a summer job, keeping them informed, trying to keep them busy, keep them off the distraction of what's going on, but rather focusing on what they can do to better themselves moving forward. And I know using LinkedIn Learning or just any learning resources have been really helpful to them in terms of getting ready for that fall semester, whether it be remotely or, be it in classroom, but just making sure, hey, do not waste these next several months, but rather better yourself. If you have to learn a new program, a new software, do something. You do have 24 hours in a day. Like I say, I work 8 hours a day, but after that, I have 16 hours to kill. I might watch the news, I may watch sports, I may watch a documentary, but those 8 hours, I try to utilize that either working or just professional development. And I'm trying to incorporate that same message to them. You can have your fun, you can help your parents, you can do whatever you want, but take a couple hours during the day to just learn something and better yourself overall, because this will end. And at some point you will have to go out there and have to present yourself in some sort of professional setting. If you're not able to articulate yourself well or able to prepare yourself, you may be back to square one. And you don't want that case, especially as a newly graduate or just a newly professional in the real world.
Do you have a sense of whether or not you guys are going to go back face to face at the beginning of next year, or is it probably going to be remote?
It's complicated. So I work at SUNY Geneseo, which is a public school in upstate New York, and right now our chancellor just resigned as of last night, and we've had ongoing discussions as to what we're going to do in terms of the opening process, but we still have no idea as to what's going to happen. And I think a lot of the main issues that we're having is more of testing. Okay, we're going to have students come in campus, how are we going to get them tested? Then with the staff, how we're going to get staff tested. And right now we're trying to work out a system where me and a couple colleagues may go in 4 hours a day and then work 4 hours from home to get those full 8 hours a day and the 40 hours a week. But everything really comes down, I think, to my opinion, just testing and funding. Are we going to get money from the federal government? Are we going to even have enough resources to get through the semester if we were to go on campus? I think remotely everything is working fine, but when it comes to going back on campus, that's really the tough question that I can't answer at the moment.
Okay. Thanks, Teddy. Adriana, are you there? Are you gonna, maybe she doesn't want to join us right now. How about Marge? Marge, can you hear me? Get you unmuted. No? I'm trying to unmute several of you guys, and we would like to hear what you have to say. Adriana, unmuted. If we can get that. How about Karen? Karen, are you there?
Hi, good morning.
How are you?
Doing fine, thank you.
So we called this show Educators Unmuted. We kind of wanted to hear a little bit from you guys about what's been going on. Are you an educator?
Yes, I work as a teacher librarian for a private school in Bogota, Colombia.
Okay.
I'm also coordinator for...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm also coordinator for STEM activities.
Okay.
It's been very interesting. At the same time, it's been very scary. It's a moment for teamwork, and also a moment to be observed by many people you wouldn't imagine would be there in your classes. Grandparents, dads, moms, aunties, big brothers, big sisters. And but every time we gather and we talk about this situation, I mean, our colleagues and I, we see that we have learned so much. if we were scared at some point our of our ICT skills. Now there is no scare at all. So yes, we are at the same time talking about the future all the time, what's going to happen, not only here in Bogota, but in general in our country for education, and not only for private schools, but also for public schools.
Well, I'd like to say, I'm in the process. I live in Portugal now. My wife is Portuguese. We moved here last year, and I'm in the process of learning Portuguese, and I'm terrible at it. And your English is fantastic. So thank you very much. You know, it gives me courage to think that maybe someday I'll be able to do that, because I know speaking in a second language in a situation like this isn't that easy. And I really appreciate your feedback and being willing to join us today.
Thank you.
Karen, are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Yeah.
I love your background. Thank you.
I'm trying to sort out my camera here. I turned it off yesterday and in the settings somewhere.
Okay.
So
Do I notice an Irish accent?
yeah, that's it. Very good. So
Are you in Ireland?
yeah, I'm in Ireland in the south, in Tramore.
Are you a teacher?
I do further education. Yeah, so I've actually was finished a course just before all of this hit off. So at the moment I'm not doing anything except watching webinars.
Were you working with kids?
I work with kids in a voluntary capacity with a coder dojo. And other than that, it's further education that I'd be dealing with.
So how are things in Ireland, by the way? I know the UK kind of lumps everyone together, but I haven't really heard specifics about Ireland.
Yeah, well, I think today was the first day that people are going back to work. So things are looking up. There's still physical distancing going on, but we're allowed to meet in groups of 4. So a few family members are getting together, but again, keeping their distance.
And how are the kids reacting? Did they close the schools, and did the children end up doing some online learning?
Yeah, the schools were closed back in February, and a lot of them were just sent lessons at home, but much of that would have been in the form of just sending through documents or PDFs with their exercises on them. So I don't know if there's been many online classrooms going on.
Do you have any sense about the reaction? A lot of the educators that we've been talking to over the last couple of months are concerned about the mental health effects of the distancing and the kids not being able to see their friends and so forth. Do you have a sense in Ireland how the young people are dealing with this challenge?
Well, I think that the younger generation are maybe more adept because they're used to learning or communicating online more than we would be. So they'd find ways around it. I've seen a lot of kids, they kind of, 2 kids the other day, they were maybe 2 houses apart, but they played the tin whistle together, finding ways around it.
That's great to hear. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Kim, are you there? Let's see. I just muted you. Kim, you there?
I sure am.
Thank you for joining us. Are you an educator?
Thank you. Yes, I am. I've been in education for over 25 years.
In what capacity?
A variety of capacities. I've taught elementary, middle school. I worked with high school and some master's level students. Currently, I'm working with some high school students, and I've been an online educator for several years before COVID hit. So it's just been a continuation of our curriculum and our system that we already had in place.
Where are you located?
San Antonio.
Okay,
Texas.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. You've been here before, I remember. So how are the kids reacting to it? You said you've been doing some stuff online. Are you basically working with kids who are familiar with this, or did you get involved with kids who were doing it for the first time?
No, they've been some are new to the curriculum and the online system. Some have been in the program for a year, couple of years. Once COVID hit and the schools closed down, and the past couple weeks, we've been met with a lot of resistance from the students because we're still expecting our students to work online and complete lessons and learning activities for, a couple hours a day, whereas their friends aren't doing much at all. They're doing worksheet packets, or they're doing online learning for an hour, maybe once or twice a week with their teacher. And the expectations are very low with the remote learning, and there are no grades. So
Right.
we've been having to, we lessened the workload with their lessons that they had to complete. We are planning more live events. We usually do like one live lesson a week or two per course. And we've had to add several events to keep students engaged and motivated to finish out the year.
Yeah, we've talked about this several times on the show too, and I think one of the things, and Teddy spoke to it earlier, is the real feeling of helplessness right now by a lot of students, and they're kind of asking the question, why is this important right now? And Teddy made some good points talking earlier about, how important it was to try and do something every day to better yourself, to kind of keep moving forward. And
Right.
I think that's easy. It's easier said than done when you're, our age, or, you're someone who can kind of see, like me, I try to practice my Portuguese every single day, and working on my language skills in the midst of not being able to do a lot of the other things that we'd normally be doing. But when you're talking about kids between the ages of 12 and 22, it's oftentimes incredibly difficult to get that going. So I can imagine that's a monumental challenge.
It is, and reinforcing the curriculum and trying to come up with live lesson activities and events that are interesting and motivating, inspiring to students is a real challenge.
Yep. Well, we'll be talking. Hopefully we can come up with some ideas today. We'll talk to other people as well. Thanks for being here, Kim.
Thank you.
Is it Kuadur? Kuadur? I'm not sure if I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right. Kuadur? Hello? Kuadur. I don't know. Maybe. Let's see. How about Lisa? Lisa, are you there? Lisa? How about Maria? Maria, are you with us?
Yes.
Thanks
Yes,
for-
I am here from Brazil. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. I saw your name and I wondered, because I live in Portugal, so I was looking at your name and I was thinking, I wonder if she's local.
That's great. That's wonderful.
How are things? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, please go.
Well, I was just wondering how things were going in Brazil. I've been hearing some pretty interesting stories over the last few weeks about what's been happening. How are things on your side of the water?
Okay. The thing is, we are living here kind of a battle. Good morning, Rusty.
Good morning.
And we are living kind of a battle between the broadcast companies. I mean, we cannot really trust what they say, because most of them are fighting against the president. We know he has this, difficult temper. But anyways, the thing is, now it's time to put aside our differences in terms of politic views. And they are not really serving, I think, in my opinion, the population, especially the ones who cannot access some other broadcast companies abroad. And so it's kind of tough. We are having problems. We still have lots of cases with COVID, but not as much as many as they, like global, they say we are having. But it seems that next week, some non-essential commerce will start opening again. But we still need some confirmation, I think.
Okay. Are you an educator? Do you work in education?
Yes, I am. I am unemployed now because I was fired at the end of March, and the school where I was working decided to fire me. And then since then, I really don't know what to do. Now I think I'm starting to recover and thinking more clearly, where should I send my resume? What should I do? What can I do in terms of finding a new place for me?
Well, good luck with that. Thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you a lot.
All right. So is Lisa, do you want to be unmuted, Lisa? I didn't see whether or not you had, I tried to unmute you. Lisa, are you with us?
Can you hear me now?
I can very well. I like
Okay,
your picture. What is that?
I'm a high school teacher, so it says don't play.
Okay. All right. No play in high school. What do you teach?
I teach English at it's an international school in Maryland that is part of a larger international network that was set up. It was set up to deal with the mostly Latino population that are high risk for dropout. So
Okay.
we have a lot of the undocumented kids and refugees. So we are teaching, they're all ESOL, English as a second language, but we're teaching content and ESOL language acquisition at the same time.
Where are you located in Maryland?
In Prince George's County in Bladensburg.
Okay. Yeah, I went to University of Maryland actually in College
Oh,
Park.
okay. Well, we're not far from Hyattsville. We're in a temporary school because we're supposed to be building a school, but it is taking a long time.
Okay. Well, thanks for being. What's the experience so far trying to work with these young people online after everything shut down?
For our kids, it's been pretty hard. We're a community-based school, so we offer a lot of services. We're able to get most of the kids computers and internet access, but it's still hard for us because most of our kids have gone to work.
Okay. So they've just decided to deal with the reality of needing money and just went back to just find something to do.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, I can see that, and that's obviously a significant concern. So thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
So what I want to do is bring up some topic ideas and just hear you all's feedback on this, because over the last couple of weeks since we've been doing this, we got some pretty interesting feedbacks. And so I just kind of want to get your thoughts on these things. And the first one is the idea, have you experienced this? Kids thriving in this new environment. Kids who are absolutely and totally thrilled with the idea of not being at school, not having to deal with the social pressures of being in high school or in elementary school, who are actually doing better online than they did in the concrete classroom, because that's a phenomenon that a lot of teachers are seeing, where they see that the kids that just weren't doing that well are doing really, really well in this new environment. Does anybody, you can raise a hand if you want to share. Let me know if you've had that experience and talk a little bit about that. Anyone had the experience of kids really thriving in this new world? I'm gonna unmute. Oh, there's Teddy right there. Go ahead, Teddy.
I can. I have seen some of my students thrive under these new circumstances, mainly for the fact a lot of them just didn't like going to class, but having the opportunity to actually do their assignments, able to attend lectures at their own pace while still having that time before the semester ended, it definitely allowed them to thrive. I've also known a lot of students who may not like to speak in class have actually utilized this opportunity to be more active, be more vocal, and sort of have that one-on-one with their professors.
Do you feel like that there may be a need to expand this program to more kids? I'm getting the impression now, because I was sort of at the beginning thinking that most kids were pretty unsettled by this, but I'm getting a sense now that you're seeing, on average 25 to 30% of the kids who are really thriving in this environment. Do you get a sense that this is what's really going to happen? Is this option of learning from home is going to be expanded in a lot of different ways?
Personally, I would hope so, but it varies with school districts and funding. I think a lot of students who may not have access to technology or just the internet itself may not excel as well. But if you even the playing field and allow students the option of going to class remotely, but still being able to, I guess, on the college side, attend office hours, or engage with their instructors, their professors, their teachers on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, it can work. But if you let a student just sit at home and give them a plethora of assignments and expect them to have it do at a due date without any interaction, then it may not work as well. So there has to be some sort of guideline and policies. I know when I did my online masters, every week we had something due, but on top of that, we also met every week as well. And in addition to that, we were given the option of meeting with professors, going to office hours. So I think if you apply the same setting to middle school, elementary school, high school, it can work, but there has to be really strict guidelines to it. Otherwise, you're gonna have students say, "Oh yeah, I did the work," or "Yeah, I'm listening and I understand the material," but in reality, they're probably way behind, aren't doing as well, and it's really hard to pick up your grade midway through a semester if you're not up to par with the material itself.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the school districts, what I'm hearing, especially in California and other places, they're talking about going to a 2-day school week. So you'll split your school population in half, and you'll send half of them to school on Monday and Thursday, and the other half on Tuesday and Friday, and Wednesday would be the day to deep clean the entire school. And so given that, the rest of the, this whole idea of flipping the classroom, right? So we flip the classroom, the majority of the work is being transmitted online and so forth, but you still have that face-to-face interaction with half your peers and so forth. I think that's an exciting possibility for a lot of kids who honestly, for them, high school or middle school or even elementary school is a lot more difficult than, some of us thrived in that environment, but there's a large percentage of kids that really don't. So I think that might be a really good change, and that's something that I'm really interested in right now is the idea of the changes that need to happen in the education system. And I want to read a quote to you. We started off a meeting last week with a good friend of mine who's a social emotional literacy teacher. We ended up getting Zoom bombed, so we had to cancel the meeting. But the quote comes from an educator with about 40 years experience that said, "It's folly to think we can resume teaching and learning in a system developed in the United States in the early 1900s. To impart upon immigrants to the United States the skills necessary to be a productive worker in factories. Be on time, follow directions, don't question authority, be satisfied in the monotony and tedium of performing the same physical task over and over. Now is the time to stop reforming around the edges and make bold changes that will serve the needs of all students." Does anybody have any feedback on that? I know, Teddy, I think, I don't know if you're still unmuted. Any feedback on the idea of serious educational reform in that regard from your experience, from what you've seen? Do we just need to go back to what we were doing, or do we really need to make some significant changes in order to connect with these kids and give them the skills they need for the 21st century? Let's see, Kim? Go ahead, Kim.
Okay. I think it depends on the age of the student. I know with the elementary students, they really miss their friends. They really thrived in the traditional school setting. more so than the middle and the high school students. They're not doing as well in the online virtual settings from what I've seen and heard from friends that were teaching in the traditional schools. And I really think that they're going to have to figure out something so that the students, the elementary students' needs are addressed and there's more interaction with the teacher than just an hour or two a week. And I don't know if that means, just like you mentioned, a differentiated schedule of 2 days during the week and 2 days off with the cleaning day. I don't know if that's enough for the elementary students to really engage and be successful and be happy with their learning. Whereas
I
high
think you're
school and
exactly
middle
right.
school,
Go ahead.
with high school and middle school, they'll love it. They have less days, they can do their work at home, and then they're done.
Well, I think it's really, it's important. We mentioned the social emotional aspect of it, and obviously in elementary school, we see more of that. And I agree with you 100%. I think what she's speaking to is not so much the online versus the face-to-face meeting part of it, as it is to the actual curriculum itself. And in thinking about what's really important over the summer and so forth, and what we need to be teaching kids right now, considering the depth of the crisis. Considering the depth of the economic fallout that's going to happen. Teddy was talking about looking for job opportunities for kids, and I don't know what the market looks like in New York, but I know in other places that there just simply aren't going to be a lot of opportunities when you have 40 million Americans out of work. And in other countries, here in Portugal, I think we have 10 million people in Portugal, and I believe we have about I think there's been almost 1.5 million unemployment claims have been made so far, and we have paycheck protection here. Obviously, it's different in a country like Portugal that's a bit smaller, but really the reality of the education itself, because I agree with you with the face-to-face part of it and trying to figure that out, but what do you think about the basic education itself? I mean, is it time to really think about what skills we're giving these kids when it seems to me right now that the way that you're successful in school right now is your ability to retain and regurgitate information. And if that's the level of humanity that we're trying to teach, then I've got a cell phone or a wristwatch that can do that better than any kid will ever be able to do it. So my question is on that side of it, in terms of what we're actually giving them.
I definitely think it needs to be reformed. And personally, I don't believe that elementary students need to be in school, 8 hours a day to learn what they need to learn. But I do know that many, it's a safe haven. They're fed, they get to see their friends and socialize to some degree. But I don't think it needs to be a full 8-hour day. Middle school and high school, they can see their friends online, and they found ways to do that. But definitely the way traditional education was being taught needs to be reformed to engage the students when they are at school. So that learning is exciting and fun, and they want to be there. Whereas the middle school and high schoolers, the higher they get, I know personally, the less I wanted to go to school every single day. So that is a definite challenge with the traditional and the online, making learning exciting and fun and interesting. Of course, there's testing and assignments due, and it's not always going to be a big fun to do day, but definitely it's time to revolutionize and revamp what we're doing with our students.
So what I'm thinking now is, and I want to thank you, Kim. What I want to is read another a quick quote here, because I'm really frustrated with the concept that what really just happened had less to do with the idea of us being concerned about the kids' education, because what really just happened is the quote comes out saying schools provide education, of course, but they also provide medical care, food, counseling services, technology, transportation, physical activity, and a place for kids to be for at least 8 to 10 hours a day. Without schools, parents can't work and businesses can't function without its workforce. So children are missing out on their developmental needs in school, but was that really the main concern? Was the main concern that they were losing their educational opportunity, or was the main concern the fact that it completely, the reality is that without public education, the workforce was absolutely crippled? That's my question to you, and seeing it from that perspective and thinking, was this really about the kids? And that's my question of going into next year. Are we really thinking about the kids, or are we thinking about the fact that we need kids to be in school for 8 to 10 hours a day so we can get the economy back on track? Any thoughts on that? Some children may, let's see, what do we got from Kim? Okay. Adding more flipped, I agree. Any comments on that, whether or not the educational system was what the bigger effect was the economic effect, and that we are more focused on that aspect of learning than we are on the other one? Thanks, Teddy. You're my best friend today. I really appreciate it.
So back to answer your question, I think it's a mixture of both. I think back to what Kim had said about having students being able to go to school. You lose some of that collaboration, team activities, hanging out with your friends, seeing your other classmates. And yes, parents do need childcare, they do need babysitters, but school kind of served that purpose as well. So if you can find a way to bridge that gap, okay, if a mother or parents have to work 8 hours, 10-hour, 12-hour shifts, how do we keep students out of trouble? And this is more of a global issue. Some students live in high-risk areas due to crime. Some students live in, a lot of areas that have high rates of poverty. And going to school sort of cater to overlooking those needs where, yes, there's our free lunches. Yes, you can see your friends. But the issue is now, okay, what do schools do to balance that? Where there's a pandemic, you have to practice social distancing, but you can't have too many people crowd at a certain time. How do you make that work? And I guess that's the other question is, if we were to have all the students come back, how do you make it work that best suits their health while at the same time making it work for the economy as well?
Yeah, and I think that's when you start talking about it, that then the things that come to my mind are things like the Boys and Girls Clubs, the YMCAs, all these additional things that have after school programs. What if you went to school for 4 hours and then you had 4 hours of social emotional literacy training, or you had 4 hours of work training? One of the things that I hear, especially from low income students, is one of the biggest problems they have is in the idea of managing money. They don't really have great skills in regard to that. We're not teaching basic skills like that in terms of taking care of yourself, learning how to deal with money, learning about finance, learning about credit, learning about those kinds of things. That stuff takes place in college at some level, but it's not even that basic. I can still remember the first dorm room I ever went into in college. That right there on the pillow was a Visa card application guaranteeing me $1,000 line of credit. And fortunately, I didn't take it because I wasn't interested in it at the time. But a lot of kids, that's the beginning of them getting into a situation where they're behind in their due. So somebody's just going to give me $1,000, not realizing that you have to pay that back and what the percentage rate is and so forth. The idea of what we're educating these kids to do are the jobs of the 19th century when this educational system was created. Those jobs don't exist anymore. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't believe for a second that a lot of them, some of them may come back, but not a lot of them are going to come back. And with what's going on right now, we're looking dead into the face of automation taking over as quickly as possible in places where a lot of kids that don't end up going to college were getting jobs in restaurants and grocery stores and places like that where there's a lot of people. So the challenge right now, I think, is to look beyond the traditional, whether or not it's daycare or whatever, and start thinking about how do we get these kids prepared for what the job market's going to look like 5 to 10 years from now. And I think that's a very interesting thing. Is your school looking at that at all, Teddy?
Well, I work at a university, so that's
Okay.
something that will have to be discussed amongst faculty and staff. But I do think in terms of middle school and high school, what you mentioned about, being able to file taxes, being able to cook, if you can incorporate classes like that, that would be a good way to, add to the curriculum. And even what Kim just said about, with credit cards, a lot of students going to college or even before going to college. I know the moment I turned 18, Discover, Credit One, every credit card company bank you could think of floods my mailbox with applying for a credit card. And I was reluctant because I didn't want to have that burden of having to pay someone back. And eventually, as life goes on, you travel, you want to go out, you end up getting a credit card, but normally teaches you, okay, if you're going to have a $500, $800 credit and you spend $100, you have to pay back either monthly, the minimum, or pay the full amount back. And those are some of the things that we have to incorporate. In addition, technology as well. A lot of stuff that we're doing now is all technology. So how do we incorporate new software? How do we incorporate, writing an email? How to, just the communication skills, both in a technology setting and a professional setting. Those are some of the things that we have to look for moving forward.
Thanks, Teddy. Yeah, I think it's really important that we think about this, and I would love to hear from any of the rest of you that had some opinions on this. We're going to be doing this show again next week, so if you want to join us, please do. But I'm really interested in that, in thinking about some of these peripheral skills. I know for a fact that when I was in college and I got into my own house for the first time, all of my roommates were struggling for money, and they all worked just like I did, and they had things to do. Lisa has something to say. Good. I don't know. How do you raise your hand? Teddy, can you text me how to raise the hand so I can tell everybody? Go ahead, Lisa.
I couldn't raise my hand. Sorry. I think you're bringing up a pretty interesting point with the potential model of 4 hours a day and other institutions stepping into the education of children, because at least my experience in the United States is that I don't think there's a high value on teachers, and we kind of get the responsibility for raising children, and it's really a shared responsibility.
Right.
And learning these life skills, like how to send an email or read something that comes in the mail and understand, what to do or how to process it. Those are not things that we can always teach with these curriculums in a classroom. And if you want, these kids are not ready for my experience, they're not ready when they get out of high school. Right. They don't have basic skills. And my son has basic skills because of me. And if kids don't have parents that speak the language or have papers or power or influence, they're not going to get the skills that they need. And it's just an inequity in the system.
Well, I think right now that everybody's realizing just how important schools are and how much teachers actually do. And I think that's not a bad thing. But I also think that as educators, we need to encourage the community that, it takes a village to raise a child. That idea. But, I've worked so much in special education classes throughout my life. And when I walk into there's usually in a lot of the special education classes that I worked in, there was a kitchenette, there was a washer and dryer, and there were other things like that where they were teaching these kids basic life skills, because what they were saying, and they were acknowledging that this kid's not probably going to light the world on fire academically,
right?
But they need an opportunity to have some of these skills. And I was saying that when I was in college, the one reason I was able to manage my money better than other kids is that I knew how to cook for myself. I was a terrible cook and I ate a lot of stuff that I probably shouldn't have, but I cooked for myself and I went grocery shopping. And the difference between going grocery shopping, even if you're going to McDonald's and trying to get a budget meal, it's still grocery shopping versus McDonald's. You're gonna spend so much more money. And then the ability to be able to take care of yourself, clean your clothes, do these kinds of things. But there's so many more community organizations out there. And I know community schooling, somebody mentioned they were a part of a community school. There's so many of these activities that they're involved in, but the idea of making school a place of real active learning, so that we are getting, like Kim was saying, that we're engaging kids in real skills that they need to be able to take care of themselves and move forward and think about things. I think it's absolutely critical, but I don't hear anybody having that conversation. And everybody's just talking about the CARE Act and we're going to get money to get everybody back in the summer slide. And we need to start testing again and doing it. And it seems to me like it doesn't make any sense right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks, Lisa. Anybody else have any final thoughts? We're about 45 minutes in. I don't know if you heard just a few minutes ago, my daughter came running into my office crying. I don't know if you could hear her. She was very upset and Daddy was on the phone and I wasn't able to talk to her. So never be afraid of that. Teddy, you're saying click the participant button to raise your hand. I don't know if anybody wants to see that. You can, I guess maybe even click on your name. I don't know, as the host, I guess I don't have the raise my hand button, but I'll look into that so that we'll be able to do it. And thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. So yeah, again, we'll be here next week, same time, talking to educators, and we'd like to hear your point of view. The week after that, we hope to have a guest again. And just can't thank you enough for all you're doing. Good luck to you, Maria, in your job search, and to Kim there in Ireland, or Karen in Ireland, and Kim. Thank you guys all, and Teddy, as usual, for joining. You're doing amazing work. Keep it up, and I'll look forward to seeing you again on here in the virtual classroom. Have a fantastic day.